Your DNA is awakening, family of light. Subscribe and click the bell to get notified moment by moment. Message begins right now. We are here to bring news of the war for Gaia and humanity.
The Civil Justice and Freedom Movement is a public benefit non-government agency. Our main legislative reform goal is passage, implementation, and enforcement of the Uniform Child Custody Act. The acronym is UCCA, which will greatly improve the administration of justice for parents and children. Our efforts include taking the initiative to participate in an online court practicum and voting on the issues presented, petition signing, and voicing your questions or comments surrounding the issues presented. By working together, we can remove the greatest stumbling block to improved psychosocial well-being and planetary healing, the crime of injustice. Passage of UCCA is the greatest milestone that the Civil Justice and Freedom Movement is working to overcome right now. Because in so doing, we can help break the cycles of violence and crime while providing a sure, safe, guaranteed plan for people trying to escape domestic violence with their children. Notice of proposed rulemaking. A request for comments and public input. This rule is in response to the victims of heinous court orders that lost their livelihood, parental rights, and freedom of choices over their resources and in their children's lives because of state court decrees that culminated from lack of a due process and unethical judicial behavior. The United States Family Law Court and the Uniform Child Custody Act is established under the U.S. Constitution Amendment 10, which preserves the right of the people to do what is necessary and appropriate to safeguard their civil liberties. The Seventh Amendment to the United States Constitution is part of the Bill of Rights. This amendment codifies the right to a jury trial in civil cases and inhibits courts from overturning a jury's findings of facts. 3/4 of the member states of the USA ratified the Seventh Amendment on December 15, 1791. As of date, the customs and practices in the USA does not have a process for exercising of that right. That is, the Seventh Amendment's provision for jury trials in civil cases has never been incorporated. As a result, domestic assault and battery is responsible for at least 50% violent crimes. Parents are being impoverished by unconstitutional court orders decreed in the name of eliminating child poverty. Victims of violence are being murdered because lack of an appropriate due civil justice process and resources that guarantee protection or safety from harm's way after being victimized by a violent crime. State laws are not aligned with constitutional rights, are deficient, and does not reflect an understanding of the psychosocial well-being of today's parents and children. As a result, at least 40 million children and at least 60 million parents in the USA alone are stricken by poverty, fear, despair, and weak social support systems. The goal of the U.S. Family Law Court is to ensure that all people involved in family law pursuits are afforded the right of trial by jury in civil cases in accordance with the U.S. Constitution Amendment 7. In the U.S. Family Law Court, All cases are judged after careful and competent scrutiny of the information collected, arranged, and computed using the justice formula. Recommendations are made by many people, at least 12 to 24 different people from different disciplines, such as the legal industry, medical professional, mental health, educators, clergymen, law enforcement, child psychologists, domestic violence experts, community leaders, probation officers, social workers, etc., during all phases of the litigation process. It is a conflict of interest for state governments to be the beneficiary, be involved in the fact-finding process, and litigate parties in family law cases. This rule deregulates the authority and responsibilities of states' customary practice of being the primary governors over every single aspect of the family unit. Much like in business, where it is customary to have segregation of duties, the same person employed to process accounts payable not being the same person employed to handle accounts receivable, is how businesses eliminate unethical accounting practices, also known as cooking the books. The effective date is immediately. The basis of the rule is to provide a viable solution to a 226-year legislative deficiency, a crime of injustice that is negatively impacting at least 100 million people in the USA today. To manifest a social order that reflects respect for human rights, a justice provision that will improve the psychological and social wellness of all people. To afford U.S. citizens with a superior fact-finding process before infringement on their livelihood and freedom rights are decreed. To provide a uniform, stable family law that reflects an understanding that human beings are a migratory species, often traveling across statutory jurisdictions. For example, in one of the smallest geographical places on the continent of North America, the state of Maryland, the laws governing domestic violence are significantly different in each local jurisdiction to another, even from one courtroom to another in the same courthouse. To prescribe a social order that is aligned with what nature prescribes. Mothers bear children and share a special relationship that should very carefully be scrutinized and assisted before being interfered with or severed is what nature prescribes. Yet, a judicial process that reflects that reality has never existed. Prior to this UCCA, the purpose of this rule is to improve the administration of justice in the USA, implement a Uniform Child Custody Act in state courts with federal level recognition and support, provide a guaranteed legal process to afford victims and their children protection from domestic violence in accordance with the Violence Against Women Act and the Victims of Crime Act, decriminalize failure to pay child support, establishing CJFM as an independent family law court to administer the UCCA, deregulation of state and federal governments' practices to coerce the family unit to obey orders on child rearing and reproduction. Those are unalienable biological rights of female human beings, which is being poorly protected in the USA. The family unit is not government property, whereas in economics, the family unit is viewed as a commodity, which is an anti-federalism and communistic school of thought that was never corrected since the abolishment of slavery. Just like those old times of the dark past, children are going to the highest bidder on the auction block in family law circuit court. By definition, parental rights and responsibilities are fundamentally, irrevocably reserved for parents. People are a biological species, not merely human resources or units of production. Civil liberties in a safe society begins with rules of engagement and balanced powers between the people and the governments being reasonably afforded in as much as possible. No public or private agency, government, or business association should be legally enabled to force a person by any court order, especially a disabled person or a child, or mandate by the threat of imprisonment to be worse off, forced into poverty to a level below their equilibrium, stripped of a livelihood. As long as people can, it is called chaos and violence. The body, mind, emotions, and life force are the 4 keys to the 12 sacred gates of life. It is sacred, meaning that any antagonistic external force in any of these aspects can cause a person to down spiral to grief, pain, or death, which calls for a very careful and accurate approach when interference of any kind is going to be enforced upon someone against their will, which usually costs a penalty of infringement upon other personal rights. Child support in the USA is currently manifesting as a criminal heinous law that punishes parents for having financial shortcomings and label them criminals for not meeting the demands of others on their time, energy, resources, choices, and pleasure. It is also known as domestic terrorism. Money is the leading cause of divorce and the leading cause of a lot of domestic violence after divorce. Current child support enforcement laws are also discriminatory because all children and parents do not have equal protection under it. The free nationwide youth programs are a justice remedy for child support. Parents are going to jail without a jury trial, being dragged, being snatched from their residences, losing driving privileges, losing professional licenses, and anything the state governments realize is valuable to a person or that is needed for enjoyment or employment, breeding chaos, fear, and violence into the family unit, which is breeding that into society. At least 100 million non-custodial parents and children in the USA can have more happiness, choices, and involvement in their children's lives, more freedom overall, and less problems with child custody, visitation rights, and financial support orders as an afforded provision of this rule.
What is the psychosocial well-being of mankind theory? The PWM theory identifies and provides the antidote to the epidemic called MDI disorder, also called multidimensional interrelational disorder. The PWM theory describes the solution to the problems with worldwide violent crime, poverty, and environmental decay, plus delivers the most accurate explanation, formula, and scientific method that captures the breadth and scope with great profundity on how to globally improve the lives of all people on the planet Earth in the following 12 different ways: food, safety, ecosystem, medical and health, education, housing, economic security, legal protection, freedom of choice, natural rights, beliefs, psychosocial well-being. The PWM theory can help us establish a remarkably efficient economic development plan to aid world leaders in making the commitment to perpetuate the measurement, observation, and improvement of the psychological and social wellness score of all people, as a human right and responsibility. These 12 improvements are already legally enacted with current international treaties on human rights and constitutional laws. But the current systems of justice, war, and politics, their customs and practice are the paramount barriers to achieving the goals. The psychosocial well-being of mankind theory offers us a new scientific method of measuring human social, biological needs under the microscope. For the first time in history, mankind has identified patterns in the nature of poverty, violence, and psychosocial welfare, for which we can now prevent the biggest threat to all life forms. As far as we know, except for the living Earth's ecosystem collective, Homo sapiens are the most complex, multicellular, endogenous macroorganism on the planet. Intraspecific violence and heinous crimes manifest from the unseen, unknown reality of people's emotionally driven thoughts that are related to multiple other controllable, seen and unseen, environmental factors in society. Social welfare deficits and the crime of injustice are the most deadliest controllable environmental factors in societies all around the world these days. A positive belief system in an individual member of society is like the rays from the sun upon the earth, the catalyst for a series of light, life, light, chain reactions. There is now a way for everyone to have access to real solutions to real everyday problems without delay and economic meltdown, war, or death. There are currently 4 categories, 7 affiliated different projects, and 36 different ways to get involved and really enjoy doing so. Bon voyage and welcome. I am a social welfare research scientist, freedom fighter, economist, enterprise architect, and founder of the civil justice and freedom movement. I do not believe in selling intellectual property or innovative social strategies in exchange for government grants in the name of furthering R&D, but instead ends up in the hands of those who suppress scientific discovery for the advancement of bureaucratic agendas instead of the people's best interests. My benefit is peace in my life, peace on earth, and privacy carrying out further socio-economic research and development for real-world socio-economic resource and data. I'm not a politician, and like most others, don't really understand it. As a disabled, victimized, educated, concerned member of society, I do know for sure that the civilian justice and freedom milestones that the people desperately need and are seeking right now is leadership under a form of governance that incorporates using CJFM solutions as a comprehensive, proactive crime prevention and intervention strategy in action. That is, that can provide a measurable assessment of achievements. I believe that as a superspecies whose behaviors and social conduct impacts all other life forms on the living earth, human beings have an unalienable obligation to actively and unceasingly produce social and biological units of production with inputs of time for all life forms on earth for the output of life. The PWM School of Thought. On the cutting edge of scientific discovery, there is indisputable evidence
that the lifetime of the human species is equivalent to the average lifespan of the individual members of the species. CJFM solutions provide a measurable unit of production for social well-being factors, also called in PWM theory the 12 gates. It includes two additional units of input and output called time and life. The Metatron model of peace on Earth provides a macroeconomic solution to the macroorganism Earth, which includes the natural resources of the Earth and all of the various biological species that live upon the Earth. My goals are to 1. Transform your willingness to demonstrate the practicality of the 10 core values into measurable output of your party's acclaimed future focus and sustainability goals without adding an additional burden on your time and money. Did you say that Black Lives Matter? Ah, yes. Well, now you can prove it or show the world what you really mean by that. You can now demonstrate and measure with empirical evidence that this is not just a slogan or pointless topic of political discussions, and that you mean action, that you mean results. You are cordially invited to participate in a real-world simulation of your roles in carrying out the 10 core values of the Green Party. A simulation is an imitation of the operation of a real-world process or system. The act of simulating something first requires that a model be developed. This model represents the key characteristics, behaviors, and functions of the selected physical or abstract system or process. In this real-world demonstration, you will be addressed as the governors and delegates, congressmen, councilmen, or political action leader that you are inspiring to be elected as. That is, unless you prefer to practice using another title. Of course, freedom of choice also applies to you. Your activities will provide real social benefits in the real world that have positive effects on the lives of real people who support your governance, that already vote and march with you. We must save lives and improve the psychosocial well-being of every human being on the planet now. The PWM theorists seek to prove that the biblical tree of life, the key to eternal human life, has been found. CJFM real-world products include a private educational institution, which is currently online at guild.org, dedicated to the Green School of Thought, where you will collaborate together to publish the textbook, which in turn is a funding source for your campaigns, in just 12 simple steps. The Metatron model of peace on Earth is also designed to produce other real CJFM products, also called units of output, that are paired to Green Party core values, such as follows. For grassroots democracy, CJFM practicum involves family law reform, Uniform Child Custody Act being implemented in state courts, so for social justice and equal opportunities, CJFM offers decriminalization of child support and the Free Youth Program. Ecological wisdom applies to educational and recreational activities, which are centered on environmental health and conservation. For your nonviolence core value, CJFM presents a guaranteed domestic violence intervention, drug-free world youth campaign project, youth for human rights campaign project. For decentralization, Our focus is decentralizing the government's power over people. An example of what we're working on here at CJFM for that is Independent Family Law Court, Supplemental Educational Program Plan. For community-based economics, we support and strengthen schools and community organization with our campaign activities and affiliated projects. For feminism and gender equity, we believe in one law for all. The psychosocial well-being of mankind theory for all. For your respect for diversity, CJFM programs are multicultural for all age groups, economic, physical abilities, and intellectual variances. Here, all life forms matter. For your personal and global responsibility core value, CJFM provides economically sound, non-intrusive, comprehensive crime prevention and intervention activities integrated in the normal social fabric and conduct of people's everyday lives. Did you know that people look up to you as revolutionary freedom fighters? Are you willing to demonstrate that you can do what you claim that you will do? In 12 simple steps, that is 120-hour units of input, according to the 5 powers of the people, the Metatron model of peace on earth, CJFM Solutions trajectory is that you can indeed do all 10 core values as an elected official and have demonstrated indisputable evidence that it can be done. Green Party power is seizing your destinies now. Please review the attached letter to the leaders of the people, which includes a petition, and I will include a video. Other than this one is the introduction to the psychosocial well-being of mankind theory, known as PWM, and the notice for proposed rulemaking for the Uniform Child Custody Act that is ready for your signature, your comments, and present it to the world. Then let me know if you accept my offer to volunteer as a supporter of your campaigns. I am still rehabilitating and enduring chronic domestic terrorism, fighting to alleviate the crime of injustice and oppressive capital governments. Dear friends, I am truly committed to your cause. More information about CJFM Solutions can be found at www.GreenEvolution.org, the online meeting place for pioneers of new social innovations. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I anxiously await your assistance and your response. Thank you.